Richard Zimmerman, and Marco Soriano. A little about myself. I'm the president of Optima Process Systems, Inc. We work to commercialize process solutions for a sustainable future. I'm also the managing member of an investment advisory company called Income Growth Advisors down in South Carolina. And I'm interested in energy and ESG. And so I'm looking at both of these elements from both the public and the private side. I'm also working on a startup, called New Air, and we are working with the Finnish Climate Fund, and we're looking to take sustainable Finnish technologies and climate technologies to the US. Our first speaker will be David Kraut. He is a legal counsel for Lafayette Square, and he's going to be discussing, we often talk in some of our past panels a lot about energy and the energy crisis and how things are evolving. And the S element, the social element, often is just defined as DEI. And David is doing some very interesting work in terms of creating value and service for lower and middle income individuals who often don't get benefits, and he will elaborate on that. We will then follow with Richard Zimmerman, who I'll introduce after David Kraut. So David, please tell us about Lafayette Square and how you help flesh out the S in ESG and maybe even touch on governance.
If you want to, David, you can go to the podium and just speak from the podium. It's going to be a bunch of individual speakers. Okay, so that'd be great. Got it. Thank you. This is a better photo from the video stream.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it, microphone.
Okay, so this.
Appreciate you having me here today. As Tyson noted, my name is David Kraut, Managing Director and General Counsel at Lafayette Square. We are an investment platform launched a few years ago with the backing of Morgan Stanley. And the goal has been from the beginning to invest in businesses that are located in underserved communities and overlooked communities. And so with the goal of having a direct lending platform that invests in these businesses, that helps them grow, economic growth, more jobs, but also partnering the delivery of capital with the delivery of services. And that is sort of where I think we've tried to distinguish ourselves and maybe add the S to the ES and G.
And prior to this, you were general counsel at Goldman?
I was managing director at Goldman Sachs. I was in their asset management group, general counsel to a variety of different businesses, including their impact business Imprint and their GP stakes business Petersill. So I've been doing a variety of different asset management businesses over my career. Before that, I actually practiced in this building, maybe even on this floor at Debevoise and Plimpton. They have since moved to the Hudson Yards along with many other folks, but 19th 3rd was my resting place for many years. So, you know, have been in a variety of different asset management groups, and ESG, as Tyson alluded to, has, I think, over time been evolving. And we're talking about ESG 2.0 today. When I think of 2.0, I think of the real expansion of the S and the G. You know, E feels relatively easy to define, potentially, at least a little bit more understandable to the layperson, those who are not necessarily involved in daily work. You can understand things like climate change, renewables, solar. S is a bit more amorphous, and I think different people have tried to figure out different ways to define it. Again, going back to our thesis, you know, the idea has been to invest in businesses in communities not usually focused on, and then deliver impactful services to the employees of those businesses. Our focus is on businesses located in low to moderate income communities or substantially employing low to moderate income individuals as defined by the federal regulations. And when we think about the services that we try to provide or help provide to these employees, there's sort of two parts there. One is using people from my firm to help think about the traditional benefits, the 401ks, the health insurance. How can there be better and improved access there? But then partnering with a consortium of different third-party solution providers that we call the Impact Allies, who essentially are working on a variety of different innovative benefits that employees can use. Everything from financial coaching, 0% APR emergency lending, improvement in credit scores by counting on-time payment of rent, just a variety of different solutions that can help to improve the quality of the job, help to improve financial education, financial security, and we think also improve the stickiness of the employee. It improves retention, improves productivity, helps the portfolio company in general. So that has been our focus, and it's definitely been an interesting time as we sit. I feel in the middle of this evolution in the S and just the general evolution across the country and the world in impact and ESG investing. I was going to make one point on that, Tyson, too, and I hope I'm not jumping too far ahead, but I think it's interesting as a general counsel to be looking at all the different laws coming at us from different areas. Obviously, you have the proposed ESG rule here in the States. You have rules and other regulations overseas, but then you have this sort of interesting division occurring primarily in this country, almost an anti-ESG backlash. And there's sort of a navigation that I think many of us in the space are trying to figure out. And I'm definitely going to be curious to hear of my fellow panelists if they're encountering any of that in their daily work. For us, I think our thesis has some resonance with all sides of the aisle. We're talking about trying to create more jobs. We're trying to talk about keeping money in states that oftentimes the money gets exported, primarily, frankly, to the coast and higher income communities, such as where we're sitting right now. And so, that's sort of our focus, and it's been interesting journey so far. Tyson, I don't know if I should turn the podium over.
I think that's great. I thought one of the products that you described was very interesting to me. I think that we're looking at a potential banking crisis, and the last time we had a banking crisis, what the banks then did after they blew up a lot of money with subprime mortgages, took a lot of losses, is they ended up charging a lot of banking fees. And one of the services that you said that your company provides, which I thought was very creative, is for these middle and lower income individuals, is a 0% $1,000 to offset all these usurious fees. Can you? And I kind of
Sure.
said, you don't think those credit card companies are rapacious, but I feel like I've seen this movie before. Could you elaborate on that? Because I thought that was a really
Sure.
clever option.
Yeah, and then maybe that gives me a chance to kind of go back to the consortium I was talking about before of third-party solution providers. It's under our Worker Solutions platform, and so it's about 15 different third-party, for-profit, and some nonprofit organizations that are dedicated different areas of this services spectrum that we work on. One of those companies from my hometown of Santa Monica, California, is Honeybee, and that's, Tyson, what you just described. Honeybee basically provides for a minimal cost of the employer to pay both a mix of financial coaching and access to 0% APR emergency lending up to $1,000. Now, what's interesting is when you look at some of the statistics in this country, a large chunk of people, I want to say it's up to 40 to 50%, don't have $500 in funds for emergencies. So you can imagine whether it's a broken car or a dental emergency, et cetera, people don't have the money to pay out of pocket. And what we were discovering talking to some of our borrowers was there is this sort of soft market where people have to go to their employer and ask for an advance. They can go to payday lenders. There's a lot of negative approaches to solve that solution. Honeybee tries to solve it by, again, providing this no questions asked, $1,000 up to $1,000 emergency lending, which then just gets paid back through the paycheck over time. And maybe I'll use this also to point out another interesting component of our platform, which is while we do encourage, and we don't require, but we encourage our borrowers to use these services. What we try to do to incentivize them is to give them a discount on their borrowing rate from us. And that hopefully helps finance a bit of, or if not all of, the payments they may need to pay to the third-party solution providers. On the back end, we actually have a credit facility from a major bank that gives us a discount on our borrowing from them, and we have similar deployment of capital in an impactful way. So there is an attempt to do sort of a back to front borrowing, lending, all in the service of providing these types of services. Yeah.
Sound a lot like an SBIC, but you're not an SBIC.
Well, it's a good question, Marty. We actually have an SBIC license.
Okay.
So our founder, Damian Dwin, who has been doing investments credit work in particular for the past 25 years, had multiple SBIC licenses before he started Lafayette Square 3 years ago. And I think we just announced this a couple months ago, we have a SBIC license. It is part of our platform. And, SBICs, as you and probably many people in the audience know, are really a powerful way to deliver capital to small businesses, particularly in low to moderate income communities, using the power of the cheaper financing provided by the
That's their
government.
purpose, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, I don't think the program has gotten enough attention or enough, usage. And I think there's a lot of opportunity and possibility there. So we're hoping to continue to explore that. You're right, though, what you may have been latching onto is we certainly aren't limited to the small business definition there. So we're looking at businesses from the single digit million EBITDA all the way up to 100 million, probably more with a sweet spot of 20 to 30 million. But we're open to that small and medium-sized business as long as it meets certain of our goals, including location or employment of low to moderate income individuals.
Is there a lattice of sustainability that are required from the people you're lending money to as well? Like, are they required to do any kind of social work, so to speak, or
No.
Work within the community, et cetera?
No, nothing specific. And this is where it's interesting as a lender, different than an equity investor, where you potentially have both more control, power, ability to influence, plus you don't have the legal concerns of lender liability. So we're trying to use more carrots than sticks. There certainly are certain elements that are integrated into some of our deals where we try to encourage, if there is, for example, if a company becomes a B corporation, which is a special designation for for-profit entities that can allow, that demonstrates their social impact, they may get a discount also on their borrowing from us. But in general, there is not a requirement for certain, social or sustainable attributes.
David, I think that's great. I think that you really touch on a real benefit, and people don't often think about addressing the needs of lower income people. And clearly, coming from the financial service industry, and I think when you were at Goldman, you noticed that it is preferable to focus your attention on the wealthy clients. And so a lot of the people who aren't are often passed over, and they get kind of screwed by the banks and the credit card companies, to put it bluntly. So I think what you're doing is great. I think unless there are any other questions for this speaker, I'd like to move on to Richard Zimmerman. And Richard has spoken here before. He's at the WRAY family office. They run about $15 billion. And they have a climate investing focus, and they have wealthy families that they service. And since he's spoken before, when we were chatting earlier today, he wanted to kind of highlight how, again, this is ESG 2.0. What are the evolving trends in terms of ESG? And we've seen a lot of shifting in this space. And so Richard is going to talk about where he sees ESG changing, ESG, and we believe, Marty and I, that the opportunities are to be found in where the new evolving markets are. So Richard, without any more to do, please remind us a little more about the WRAY family office and where you see, let's say 10 to 15 important themes in ESG.
Perfect. Is this working?
Uh,
Yeah.
Turn it up.
Should be.
Turn it up or on?
I think it should be.
Turn it up. Turn it on. Okay, good. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Happy to be here again. Thank you, Marty, Tyson, analysts. So as Tyson mentioned, I work for a family office company. I'm a partner there. We have about 95 families and we serve as a outsourced family office for everything they do. But if they want to do things with impact, both in investing and philanthropy, that's what I run. And that's a growing trend, as you know, in the industry, but also in our firm. It's a great vantage point for me because I get to look across the board and across the world at impact investments every day. Probably made 60, 70 investments in the last 2 years or so, both public, private, and direct. And they do them out of investment vehicles or philanthropic vehicles, foundations, staffs. It's given me a good view of what's out there, what's going on, what I think may be going on. And by the way, we do invest in the areas you mentioned, David, the social arena, social notes. It's a tougher arena to invest in, and hopefully there'll be more platforms for that. But we both invest in the equity and debt in those areas. So these are my views. We can all debate them, but on ESG 2.0, ESG has been wounded, but it's not dead. Anti-ESG pressures will put the spotlight on the industry. However, this will help ESG version 2.0 to evolve. Actually, I wrote that before this conference, so just kind of fit as the headliner. I don't know exactly how it's going to evolve. I actually feel that we should just kind of get rid of the name, the letters, everything else. It's going to be embedded. It's already sort of moving. I feel like it's integrated and it just should be the way that we're doing things, whether or not you're a company or you're analyzing a company or investment. But there'll be a next version of the phoenix that rises from the ashes. Regulatory pressures, they're here. They'll be continued increased, and there'll be a lot of more pressures on corporate boards and management teams to elevate and integrate sustainability throughout their company activities. Actually just went through a whole degree to be on corporate boards, and they didn't even have degrees like this before, but whether or not there's roles on the board or chief sustainability officers in the companies, most every company is going to have them, and I think that will help, and they'll have more influence as well. Information key, the push for better corporate transparency and accountability, that'll drive companies to seek better data and reporting systems throughout their value chains. We're investing in some companies that do global supply chain metric data collection, and it's kind of the Wild West right now, but companies really need good data rather than proxy data. So I was over the next 10 years using, technology especially, and getting on the ground to be able to actually prove their claims and source back to the original and help the whole system. Let's see, quality data and reporting goes with that. So you've got to have quality data, both if you're an ESG manager, you're looking at that, but also if you're a company. And there'll be actually that's a huge field for consultants. DEI coming out of COVID. DEI and climate, I think, are the two things that really popped out of COVID. So diversity, equity, and inclusion. That'll be accelerate, and even certainly in the S. Activism, more activism. A couple of years ago, I did a search for hedge funds that did any kind of ESG or impact. Couldn't find any. Now there's more, and now we're talking or investing in a number of them, and they're getting into the game through activists, which can push the envelope and in certain ways. Corporate claims. We hear a lot about greenwashing, both at the corporate level as well as at the fund level. I think greenwashers, quote unquote, will be further outed, and that'll lead to two somewhat contradictory things. One, companies or funds will improve their practices to align with their stated ESG mandates, or two, companies will back off their ESG goals in order to reduce potential regulatory risks and public backlash. And I think both of those are going to happen in a fair amount. We've already seen some backing off, both from companies and funds. I'm sure that's driven by putting out mandates from the top and then not being able to fulfill them right away. The Net Zero Club. I think net zero pledges will place companies in the spotlight to build out their capabilities and systems to mitigate and sequester carbon to meet their goals. It'll bring about further investment in the places, but it also may cause corporations to back off those promises in the next couple of years because they signed up for something that's very difficult to do. One thing we found last year in investing was the ESG strategies had a very tough year. But that basically I think the key reason is they basically invested in growth stocks, almost all of them. So what we're going to see is more value managers in ESG come out, and we're already seeing some of those funds, and value and core strategies, and as well as more active management. And then finally, in this category, the further rise of impact. Impact is what I feel is impact is what the company is doing, and ESG is how the company is doing it. So as ESG redesigns itself, the focus on impact will increase. That's really where I spend my time. Is I want to know how the company is doing it. I really want to know what they're doing, and we get a lot involved in thematic investing, which people call impact investing. I just think it's good investing in themes. So what are some investing themes out there? Tyson mentioned climate change. I do a lot of climate investing. That's creating whole portfolios that can be climate aligned, or it can go down specific categories. This is going to be with us for the rest of our lives, our children's lives. I'm going to look at this optimistically. I've been studying climate since the mid 80s, and I've sat on a number of academic groups and boards and organizations in this space. So to keep me sane during the day and sleeping during the night, I'm just going to look at this as a great opportunity to do our best to help fix things. And there'll be some really great investment opportunities as well. And that's my mindset. Adaptation and resilience is going to take a greater role in investing now. Usually and historically, it's been more in the public sector. But basically what's going to happen is we first came in and started to work on mitigation, and that will continue. But we've really, what climate's doing is creating so much disruption that over the next 10 years, that's going to pick up a lot. Mitigation, all those other solves will continue, but we're going to have to figure out a way to be more resilient and more adaptive. And, insurance industry, the governments, and I think there's a role for private capital there too. The Inflation Reduction Act, really a great piece of legislation. Whatever they're mentioning now, there's a multiplier effect for that. We've done a lot of work in that space. I think there's already a number of investment strategies that have been in that space in certain areas, but I think there'll actually be funds out there now to sort of follow that. I hope there are. But I think there's going to create tremendous tailwinds for clean infrastructure and energy build out. Energy independence and the energy transition is going to be a huge continued movement. What's happened, we don't talk about the Ukraine as much anymore, but that really woke everybody up to think about how to become more energy independent and the whole deglobalization themes that are going on. So you'll see because of that and because of the Inflation Reduction Act and other measures, there's going to be a lot more build out here in the United States. There's going to be a lot more opportunity. It's going to be for traditional energy. It's going to be for transitional energy. It's going to be alternative energy. And anything that goes along with that, all the infrastructure, we can talk about that later. All transportation, probably a number of us have a hybrid or an electric car or want one. There'll be such a movement in this, especially with the IRA backing it. So consumer demand and to be able to produce here. He will be able to get the minerals that are not, basically the laws are set up to benefit the North American side of things. So there'll be a big movement there. We're actually looking at investments in that space right now. Something that's popped recently, and it came out of the next COP meeting after Egypt, but it was the biodiversity in nature. That's an area that it's hard to get your arms around and think about how do you invest in that? What's going on when it seems so big? Is that something that all for governments? But I think in the next 10 years, that's going to be a huge investment area. It's going to take some time. It's a bit of the Wild West now, and it's going to take a different kind of investment framework. But I think there'll be a lot of opportunity, and I think it's obviously important for our environment, where we live, but also sequestering carbon. Water will be a very pressing topic and a huge opportunity. I just held a group gathering with about 30 impact investors last week talking about water. Very big opportunity there. Watch that space. Obviously, water stress is a global issue, but in the United States, we all reading about it. The thing about water is it's a very interesting sort of, I don't know what to call it, but attention curve in essence. So you don't really think about it until you have to, and then you can't think about anything else. So, and we're headed in that direction, not only just because of the aging infrastructure, but basically what's happening with climate change. It's going to be either too little water or too much water, and a lot of competition with the energy system, the consumer side, and the agricultural system. Sustainable agriculture is connected to that. Big shift in trend there. So how are we using land? How are we raising livestock? How are we raising food? How are we planting food? Good food, better food. Plus, how do we keep more carbon in the ground? How do we use less bad things? A lot of science in that. It'll be a big investment. It is a big investment area. Will continue to be. And then another one to point out among many others is carbon markets. Carbon markets is still very early, but it's getting formed very quickly. There's markets at the NGO and government level, corporate level, but it's coming down to how private capital can come and invest as well. I mentioned the kind of Wild West and things. It's certain parts of it are very Wild West. We're going to have better verification, validation of carbon. But I really see carbon as a huge opportunity as an investment, whether or not you're investing directly in the offsets or you're investing, say, in land that has water or other sources that use less water or more water or, and more carbon, I mean. So I think I'll pause there.
Do we have any questions?
Yes, Tyson, I'm asking a question. So the question is scale of these exchanges of the carbon credits. I mean, we had a discussion yesterday.
Yeah.
It's about $1 billion worth of carbon credits issued every year, but that's tiny for most exchanges. I mean, even like, Coinbase is exchanging, $100 billion of crypto every year or so, right? So, scale, I think, is an issue with making that marketplace for carbon credits.
Yeah. So scale, I mean, I'm not an expert in this, but I'm learning about it a bit. And I'll be learning about a lot more as I start investing more in a couple of years. So there are a lot of good, I can point you to people who really know this. There's actually some public vehicles now to invest in this as well that I think are pretty good, but which will help scale. This is so early and it's so fractured and it's so unput together in some ways. And it wasn't really designed to be a scaled market for private capital either. It's going to take many iterations to get scale, but it needs to be scaled. We're, ultimately, a lot of us feel like we've got to price carbon, and it's got to be in everything. Corporations are pricing carbon already internally. We're going to have to price carbon. We're going to probably need regulation on carbon, penalties on carbon. We're going to need a carrot for it as well. So same with water, I think.
How much of the 15 billion goes into ESG?
It's not as much as you want, but more than actually I would have thought. So I want to just say it that way because our families are global and they have a lot of other things that they invest in, but it's a significant amount. I think that, so I don't want to put a number because I don't want to make it look like, now we can spot a trend here. But I can say that there's more and more families that are taking this on and they're putting more capital there. Most of it has been what they want market rate returns, but also we're realizing that some of it is concessionary as well. So there is an uptake. The other thing I'll say, and it's important amounts, but I think the other thing I'll say is that two things. One is you can do it in every asset class. So let's just say I'm going to do it in fixed income, and there's a good way to do it, and there are a lot of firms that do it. That may not be risk capital. Well, last year it was kind of risky, but just in general. So
Do you invest in opportunity zones?
yes, yeah. Well, actually, we looked at opportunity zones. I looked at them and spoke actually at a number of conferences during that period when they were coming out. We actually never did invest at the end. But that done well, they made sense. We just didn't find something that we wanted to do. But I actually know of some really high integrity, high intention groups. A lot of them were regular real estate operators who were doing traditional deals in opportunity zones, and we were looking for something that was a little bit more impactful. On your point before, I'll say too, statistically, women have been leading the charge here for this shift and movement. And then the next generation, if you read every report, that's been my experience as well. Mostly women. That I invest a lot myself, but there are a lot of women in families that are investing. But it's starting to broaden. And in my group of just impact people, it's pretty diverse. But that's a select group.
Another question?
What are some sectors or spaces where you see family offices really driving investments and creating systemic change within the broader ecosystem?
Broader impact ecosystem. Yeah. So the question is, where are some of the sectors? What are the interests? It's going to be family specific. I don't know if I can draw like this question before, but DEI has become a bigger thing. So I've spent time with women investors who want to make sure that women founders and women GPs are getting the investments. That's broad, and that was sort of our mandate, but it started to be broader diversity in many ways. Race, gender, other, but that's one, and across the industry. I think this whole social note sector, I think, is going to be bigger and bigger once it gets done better. In essence, because it's too hard to sort of dive in. We have to dive in all individually. It hasn't been done in a scalable way. There's a big group that's been doing obviously energy, renewables, all the things that I just mentioned as well. That's now, and you can see what's happening with the cost of renewable energy, everything going down. There's already been so much investment there, but I would say that's another. But if you give me, I sit down with a family or even in talks like this, we just go to the SDGs. You could take everyone and say, okay, do you care about this? This is how you can invest, or grant, in essence. So the good news is you can do it across the board.
There's a lot. Sorry, go ahead.
Any thoughts on hydropower? It seems to be in decline.
In decline? I'm not an expert in to say it's in decline. Let me think.
Outlawed in Oregon, and they're
Let me just say something very uneducated here. But I was with one of the top people, the top person at Columbia Water Center the other day. We kind of talked about this, but hydropower is going to involve dams. There's no new dams being created, and there's an aging infrastructure. But somebody was telling me about a water turbine. There's going to be a lot of water turbine technology that are occurring that'll be distributed water power.
Yeah, okay,
Those kind of things. Somebody just told me about investment in that, all that kind of thing, or in oceans as well. When you think about it, it's energy from water moving, in essence. So whether or not it's big hydropower or not, but it's been a good part of our energy mix. It will be an issue, not only from infrastructure, but also having water to go through it. So
yeah, I mean, the issue is that the government has a hard time. If you're a New Yorker, maintaining our roads. These dams are built in the 30s and haven't been maintained very well.
Yeah. Later on, if you want, just.
But there is a dam in Ohio or
Indiana. I know a little bit about the space,
Yeah.
and there's different types of turbines and different types of hydropower.
Yeah.
So you have stream hydropower, you have the tidal hydropower, you have dam hydropower that is the old from the 20s and 30s.
Right.
That is extremely expensive to remake. But what I've seen a trend in, specifically in Latin America, I can talk about the US, but micro hydros under 100 megawatt, 50 megawatts. Families have been getting the licenses for years, and with very limited civil works and damage to the environment, they're building a 50 megawatt hydropower will be a multi-generational wealth preservation for a family. So people that were in civil works, they took their money, dropped it into hydropower, and now they receive a paycheck. And
Yeah, I think you're spot on, and you know more about it. But this whole idea that we did is distributed in energy first. Now we're going to do it in this. Absolutely. Whether or not then the utilities want the water or want payment, all of that has to be worked out. But the technology, I think.
Other technologies.
There's lots of water rights issues out there that are kind of.
Yeah, but like for instance, a company that I'm friendly with, close to, they recently bought a company in Spain that they produce micro hydro turbines that you can put in the water corporations of the country. So the I don't know, whoever distributes water here in New York, you can put it in the right after the pump. So any energy you're wasting in the pump, you're picking up in the water flow.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah,
And they're using it so there's so many different things.
there is. I mean, this is what your point is. Once you open it up, there's so many cool things. Definitely. Okay. I think we're good. We're good?
I think we're good. Our next speaker is Marco Soriano, who I spoke to for the first time last night. He's got a very interesting background. He's the CEO of Soriano Group, a 115-year-old Italian family conglomerate. They make motorcycles. He, as CEO, oversees multiple divisions, including fashion, digital. He's also the author of a company called Entrepreneurial Madness. The Code is Your Life. I'm not sure whether that's your only book, but he's very much of a technology visionary and entrepreneur. And he's going to speak about what the Soriano Group is doing in terms of ESG. And just what I can say about him is that they are a large consortium, an Italian family. Fashion is certainly a part of it, but I'll just leave it at that. Marco, please tell us about what some of your thoughts are, what you see in your corporation and in terms of ESG and the trends that you guys are incorporating.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Marty and my fellow panelists and everyone here attending, both digitally and physically, for the opportunity to talk about us. As it seems a bit selfish at times, it is a topic that I like to bring to the table of what we're doing today as opposed to what we did in the past. The past, I'm the fourth generation single family office. I privately started running this in 2009, the youngest of 5 siblings. So that was a bit of a hard transition, as you may imagine when you become the boss of your older siblings. But it was a great transition. And the fact was that my grandfather saw in me a different type of management. Today, I can tell you my family, there's half of the family that just enjoys life. And then there's a half that actually works. So discipline is a big part of lifestyle. My lifestyle is work, and work has become my lifestyle. And ESG, without even thinking about it, has been part of our DNA from very early stage. Today, they have frameworks and they try to tell you how to run your business. Whereas I have a different approach with the way we invest in the market, what I consider ESG. We rebirthed Soriano Motors in 2020 after being dormant almost 70 years. We had been the pioneers in the industry of engines, manufacturing and designing in countries like France, Spain, and Italy. History in the records of books, and people talk about you when they're learning about engineering of engines. We were the first, the Fords, the Chryslers, Voltacos, Soriano, Montesa, which were some of the companies at the time. I'm happy to say we rebirthed this company in Italy. We focused ourselves in the electric vehicles, and it was more of a challenge. I was in an interview, I believe in Fox News once, and the guy called me out and said, well, you are like the Tesla of motorcycles. And I said, well, no, maybe Tesla is the Soriano of cars because we have been making them in the past for a much longer period of time. Today, 2023, we're 120 years in business, trademarks, copyrights, you name it. I'm very, very proud of that milestone. The electric vehicle sector, let's talk about a little bit about this because there's a lot of misinformation about this. The battery systems, lithium ions, lithium polymers, whatever it is you're putting in your vehicles, which today is what it is. It's that specific raw material. It's very damaging to the environment. Yes. It's what's available. We're looking at alternatives. For example, manganese. If you look down on the family of chemistry, the table of chemistry going back to Chem 101, you can see that it has different or similar characteristics to that of lithium. The manganese is also found abundantly in the market. We heard about graphene 5 years ago. That's another approach that we're taking. Hydrogen cell fuels. The issue is the lack of. Ready today, if there's a company here that is ready to sell me a kit to test it in my electric vehicles and prove to the world that that is, in fact, viable, ready, and there is the process of educating your clients. In our end, what do we do differently? We sell our products to the market, but we have a program of reconditioning these batteries, given the lives, even a second or third life to the same battery systems. Because the batteries is such a great business out there that after 5 years, your battery depletes and you have no choice but to buy another car or change that battery system, which is gonna cost you probably about 1/3 of the total cost of your vehicle. So it is not a viable product just yet for people that are transitioning into the hybrids, the EVs, and so on. And it impacts the earth because you still have to manufacture more lithium-ion batteries as opposed to taking it back from the client and saying to them, I can prolong the life of this battery and give its due time for technology to catch up with an alternative that is more viable for the market. That's on the E. On the social part, I would think about terms like equal opportunity, gender equality, and so on. Honestly, I don't hire people based on those metrics. I hire people based on meritocracy and also interest to work. Because today you hire a number of people and within the year they leave the company to a better company. This is a phenomenon that you can't stop. You may hire the best person that you think and then they leave you, then what? You are back to square one trying to find that talent. This in Europe is a big issue. The talent in southern countries in Europe, for example, are leaving to the north in Europe, or they're leaving to the United States because it's more of an attractive economy. So anytime you have issues within an economy at a national level, this is what's going to happen. So we're dealing with that. Gender equality, I presume, from my experience, and really I prefer the woman in our company to talk about this, because when I have installed a open door policy and I have female staff walk into my office and tell me, I'm very happy to be working for this company, I find that more rewarding than to me telling my management we need to hire only women or minorities of whatnots. And that happens often. And I think that comes with leadership within the company. And I love to treat everybody the same. I see everybody with the same size. The core values that my family gave me, from respect others the way you like to be respected, it's our number one rule. I like to hear people's ideas. I actually promote people to give me better ideas, better solutions on the table. Anyone can talk about problems because we all have them. And that is something that I discourage. Don't come to me with the problems because I already have them and I already know them. Come to me with the solutions. So this is how we promote within the social setting. Governance is huge. I come from corporate America. I started at Goldman, the World Bank, Goldman, and then I left them to run my family office as of 2009. Critical time for a lot of companies, as you know. Father retiring, being the youngest sibling of them all, kind of put me in a whole different stratosphere within our family office. So what are we invested in? First of all, a little bit more about governance. We take what corporate America has taught me into our family structure. So timing is extremely important. Today, all supply lines are disrupted. So if you have a group of engineers that give you one or two solutions and you order that part, that mechanism or whatever, whatnot, within the month, you'll find out that it didn't work and you have to go back again. So you have to be very, very careful and diligent before you make a decision, a educated decision to moving on forward. What are we doing differently today? Anything that is synergistical within the sector in the automobile industry. We have started with motorcycles. We're already projecting a car, bringing back the Soriano classic car of 1926 and building a 2026 car and selling both cars as a couple. This is something that nobody in the automotive industry has done. And it's something that we are right now flirting with, but projecting it to have it available for modeling next year in 2024. So today you can find our motorcycles. We have a line, bicycles coming to the market. And then there's a component of fashion. Why fashion? Lifestyle. When your lifestyle, your work, and everything that you touch becomes part of you, accessibility is a great starting point. Clubhouses, right? Having a clubhouse like Soho House, give you an example, has no brand associated to it. But if you have your own brand, and this goes back to branding, what are we doing with our brand? It's putting our name on everything that we are investing in. I believe in our own brand. I believe in our history. I believe in the way things are being done today. You can buy a Tesla today. It's great for you, but there's nowhere else. There's no community. There's no social impact. There's no connectivity to the world other than to say that you have a Tesla and good for you. What about it? What's next? So I like to think about it being disruptive, using a framework that was given to me by my past generations. Yes, listening to what's out there and trying to see how we can potentially integrate that to our existing systems. So I'm saying about do not reinvent the wheel. And at times you need to reconsider that because using a third-party system or infrastructure may not necessarily fit with your future projections. In our case, and I mentioned this because the systems today, to build a car, I can use the chassis of a Corvette and I can use the engine of AMG Mercedes-Benz if they allow it, which most of them do. Or I can use perhaps some of Tesla's technology, which they don't allow it yet, but there are other companies within the sector that would. And you can take all of those elements and put something in the market, but is that original? So I stand by being an OEM in the market as a family office, as a family name. I invite other family offices to participate with us. If they have synergies within the sector or whatnot. And this is sort of how we're enforcing the ESG within our framework. Thank you. Tyson, any questions? Marty.
What do you think about 3D printing?
Great question.
What do you mean infrastructure issue? New York
Yes.
City has pipeline that's been laid out for a couple hundred years. And all the companies go out of business every 10 years. So in order to replace burst pipes along the city, like in Queens or Brooklyn,
Yes.
they have to take out whole sections of it because they can't find a widget to put into the pipe to fix it. So they got to cut a block long on the pipe. And so that's where 3D printing might come in as well as for what you're doing.
Both robotics and 3D printing are within our framework of investment.
Okay.
So we are not replacing people per se because you still need people behind the machinery. You can't rely 100% on the machinery, the software behind it, or even the 3D printing. Somebody has to man it. So it's not replacing jobs, but optimizing the jobs of the people that are involved. Like you say, if today I need a part from one of my, it can take months, 3 months
Right.
to wait for that part, and sometimes doesn't even fit. 4 years.
3 years.
Years for this lady. You see, I don't know what she's buying.
My grandfather's business, something went wrong with the water valve and it took the water company 3 years because he bought the business in 1920 and they couldn't match whatever the valves and the pipes and what.
Well, yeah, you can have several designs in the market, but that does not mean that the manufacturer is doing that business anymore.
Absolutely.
It's better to use standardized homologated parts so that you don't have to restart the clock.
Yeah, so what I get, and this gets back into the social aspect, and which is that everybody says robotics, we're talking, society to integrate all these great technologies, but we're far from perfect here in New England.
Well, it's kind of a trial and error, right? Engineering, for those that work with engineers here, you understand trial and error, until you get to the point that you've got a finalized product. What I would suggest or advise, if you are in that industry, is you stop the clock at one point of time, do your production, come to market with something, and then version 2, version 3, version 4, just like Apple does or Microsoft or any other company in the world. Because if you're looking for perfection, that will never happen. And you will be stuck in day one every single year. And investors that you're talking to are expecting revenue, are expecting the company to actually turn in a profit some point of time. So that's a big mistake that I see from a lot of companies out there in technology or in the electric vehicle sector as well.
Speaking of electric vehicles, did you say that you were selling your vehicles in tandem, 2 at once?
We will be the cars.
Wow.
The motorcycles today is direct to client, B2B, and
You'll be selling 2 at the same time?
you'll buy the classic 1926 and the 2026 modern version of the Soriano car.
There'll be 2 different vehicles?
We call it La Copieta, which means the couple. You buy the couple. And it's 100 years legacy. So your investment in the car really has more value. Today, if you buy a Tesla and you heard this, it doesn't really depreciate much in value. You buy a Ford or a Nissan, as soon as you get out of the dealership, it loses about 20% of its value. These are known numbers and factors. So we're trying to optimize the value to the client as well as to whoever is the distributor at that point with us.
Will they be sold in the US or?
The collectors, most collectors are in the United States, Dubai, and some in Europe. So I would say yes, mass market production is not foreseen just yet because we're very niche and it will require a significant amount of capital. But that does not mean that medium to long term, we're not looking at that. Could be a possibility. Yes,
Do you have orders for this? Because the only other company that I know who required that you purchase 2, so my dad collected cars, was Mercedes.
Yeah.
If you wanted a certain engine in a certain model, you had to buy another car also.
yes. So, and that's a great point. So we're working with the Peterson Museum out of Los Angeles. And basically they're going through their network of collectors out of mostly California and Texas. And those are the guys that are buying, and then I have some of clients, people, friends that are doing that. Yeah.
Interesting.
How many vehicles do you think you'll be producing? 20?
Are we talking about the motorcycles or the car?
The pair. The couple.
As of now, we've 10 couples, so 20 of them,
Okay.
and we may move that up depending on the demand. We have a great approach to this. For example, we have built what I would consider state-of-the-art metaverse, and you've probably heard this. Everything that comes out of the pipeline, the Sirius pipeline, comes numbered, meaning it has a value, a crypto value or NFT to it that we are promoting within our metaverse. Now, the metaverse, understand this, in prototyping phase to homologation phase to production can take up to 3 to 4 years. So to bypass prototype phase, which could be that long, you can do a digital version of that, as opposed to a mock-up, put it in the metaverse, shop it around the world, understand the market data on that, understand the market demand on it, and based on that, make a decision on investment to roll out production. So it's a way of saving time and money significantly. Most companies, it's like today, you go to the dealership, you buy what they have in store, right? In stock. With us, you'll buy what you really want. You build it with us. We build it with you. That's a different
Practical description of an NFT, any usage I've ever heard. That's helpful. Thank you.
right. It's a physical meets digital meets virtual kind of world. And we're doing the same with fashion. We're doing with any products that we're investing in the market, and that's minimizing impact on, for example, Yamaha or Kawasaki, they will come to market every year with different speed bikes. They'll do 50, 100 of them and then throw them out. It's a waste.
So, I think I've heard that, these motorbikes, have a battery that implodes if you bring them inside. Is that correct?
Excellent question. Quality control. And this is why everything that we're doing is made in Italy because of quality control. What most companies are trying to do or are doing is cutting corners by going to China or other countries in Asia that are manufacturing for less of the cost. But quality control is an issue. So it's very hard for me if I'm using a Chinese battery system to tell my client, I'm going to give you a warranty on that. But if you're buying it from something that we're making in-house and you can see it in our laboratories, research and development, then I can say I can give you 5 years and offer you a program to recondition your battery for the next 10 years as well.
So you make batteries as well?
We do it all in-house. We're like the little minions working and it's beautiful. Any other questions?
So
Yes, please.
I just love cars.
From the Midwest?
No,
Oh.
not at all. Are your parts interchangeable or not? Do you see yourself as the car version of Apple? Because once somebody gets hooked on Apple, you only work and buy Apple products because they're all integrated. So if somebody, you make your own carburetor, you make your own shocks, you make your own engines. Are your parts interchangeable with, say, something Ford makes or not?
Today, we have the capacity or the knowledge to take any existing vehicle that you may be driving endothermic engine and transform it into an electric vehicle. So we're using the same parts you already have and doing so that you meet the standards of regulation of the market. 2035, 2040, as you already know, we all should be electric. On the other hand, whatever we're building today it's a version of that motorcycle, but we need to also standardize certain things. For example, the issue is charging stations. So we're using the standard charging station socket that you'll see in every car. There's no need for me to make something different. Apple does that on purpose because they're massively producing. Niche market products should obey by what's already standardized and then evolve as the market evolves, because it's really about that being available for the client, for the manufacturer, and so on.
So would your vehicles be compatible with like the Tesla?
Oh, yeah.
Because Tesla charging is all I see, and I'm not sure, but there's several different charging styles
is one thing.
or
Normative. So let's start with that. Let's kind of demystify this. If I may.
Tyson, sorry, I've got 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So, and we have a hard stop.
Let's go. So I got 5 minutes.
You have 1 minute, and then we have closing comments.
Quick thing, demystifying the batteries is normative 3 and 4. 3 being normal, standard in your home outlet where you have to set up a wall box.
yes.
And that could have the name, your surname if you want it, or mine. Doesn't have to be Tesla on it. And normative 4 would be fast charging capacity, which still haven't been presented in the market, but would be anything within 15 minutes. So you go to a charging station, anywhere, shopping mall, gas stations, eventually, I hope, and charge it within 15 minutes. Have a cup of coffee, charge your battery, and keep going. That's where we're going next.
I think this has some legs, and thanks
Thank you.
so much, Marco. Can we get some closing comments? Rich, do you want to give some closing comments first? And then we'll come over to this side.
I haven't thought of any closing comments. No. Any questions or anything? Any burning?
Maybe is what would be parting thoughts thinking about over the next 12 to 18 months about ESG and your role with it. What you can explain is that we have 15 billion assets under management, but I'm not sure about what you have under advisement and then how influential you guys are. You publish white papers.
Yeah, well, all of ours is under advisement because we work just for the families. We don't actually, we're hired by each family. We're individual family offices. But
Right, okay.
I would say writ large, whether or not you kind of call it ESG, but certainly impact is the mega trends of the future and the biggest investment opportunities. So I think it actually doesn't serve it to just put something in a bucket, call it impact, because people may say, oh, that's that niche thing over here. That's for do-gooders or that's concessionary. I feel that none of that's true, and it doesn't, it doesn't serve a fund manager or a corporation. It is just where everything is headed, and there's tremendous opportunities for investments in all those spaces. That's my parting thoughts.
Dave?
I guess maybe just to piggyback off of that, I remember my Goldman Impact colleagues used to say their ultimate plan was to put themselves out of business because they would make ESG so inherent and integrated into what investing was that there would be no more designation or delineation between impact and regular investing. I think we definitely are seeing further and further trends, again, even with some of the anti-ESG elements. And also, I was going to make one other comment, which was, we were talking in the last panel about SVB and some of the challenges for regional banks. I do see, certainly in our space in particular, these sort of private and particularly impact investing businesses, lending, filling a role that regional banks often were playing in the past.
I guess the last remarks are the fun ones. As of 2 weeks ago, we bought a MVNO, which is a mobile virtual network operator, telecommunications out of Italy. And we did it with a purpose, and our slogan is connecting Italy to the world. As you know, Italian products, anywhere you go in the world, are well liked and well taken. Hence, the information that we put out there through telecommunications is not only connecting people, but it's also promoting things, events, products, and so on. So in our existing telecom company, which is Elite Mobile, you have a platform similar to Netflix where content supports artists, filmography, but also allows you to have concierge services. So anything you need, you dial your carrier, which is something you cannot do with T-Mobile, and get access to. So it's all about accessibility and bringing the world closer to them. This is our latest investment. Very happy that we're involved, and thank you for having us.